Hello, and welcome back to Truth-Based Relationships, the podcast. I'm Juan Andrés, your host, welcoming you again. In today's episode, we're going to dive into what is to give from the perspective of the authentic self relationships model. And for any other episode, I recommend you always you can see this diagram, you can see the chart in asrmodel.com, so you can see the details of the connections if you're not watching the video. And the dimension of giving in the authentic self-relationships model is the one that is called heart space in the bottom right corner. And this is basically assessing the question of where are we giving from. And I have explained briefly this parallel, this spectrum even that we can create between what it is to give from duty that leads us to transaction and what it is to give out of generosity. And I will just summarize a little bit of this idea first, just to be in tune with everybody. I usually explain how much giving out of duty, and when I say duty, means the self-demanding way, when we give not because we really want to, not because of there's a joy in giving, that would be generosity, but when we do something because we think we have to. And in a way, again, is this counterpart of the morality aspect of having a script of what is the right way of doing things, or it's coming from a perspective of control when we believe that if I do the right thing, I will get something back or something will be preserved. And this is exactly when we're going towards the aspect of transaction that happens, right? There is an element that if I do the right thing, fitting in the models that I believe are what's creating the basis of our relationship, I'm going to get what I want. And I want to stop here for a second, because I'm not trying to say that there is not a certain level of reciprocity in relationships. For me, it is a very clear balance that you are going to develop in a relationship. For it to be satisfactory, you are going to want to experience a sense of reciprocity. But reciprocity is not something that is necessarily transactional. It's not about if I give you this, you'll give me that, and I do it in a utilitarian way, because otherwise it becomes very calculative and it's not coming necessarily, again, from the heart. This is why for me it's this dimension of the heart space. It's not necessarily coming from a motivation of really wanting to experience your relationship in the compatibility that you are embodying every time you are living time together in this relationship. So the transactional aspect happens when I'm going to do something just because I want something in return. And this is usually coming from the notion of duty, because it's self-demanding. Okay, so the same aspect of this parallel is that when we are not listening to ourselves, to what we really want, we are going to do something that we believe is going to get us what we want. So we're not anymore having a direct input in reality of saying, I'm taking responsibility of my feelings. Again, this is part of the responsibility dimension of the ASR model. And I'm just going to do what I believe is the right thing to be done. That is, again, acting from the dimension of mindset of the ASR model of morality, of what is the right or the wrong way. I believe what is the right thing, and I'm expecting something in return. So why is this demanding? It is self-demanding because I'm not following what feels right. That would be, again, the mindset of truth, of what feels right in the moment. Is following what I believe are the rules for me to get something in return. And that, again, is a transactional dynamic. And you can say, well, maybe I like transactional dynamics. You can say, okay. But for me, this is something that is away from a relationship that is based on co-creation. And we have been speaking about this. And for me, any relationship is based on what you define it to be with the person you are in. The co-creation is being on the same page, is saying, why are we doing this? Are we in this relationship because we want to have, again, a transaction of favors? And maybe if that is the case, okay, you create a contract and you create something that is more like a business partnership maybe, and you have some bylaws and some rules and some agreements, and it's all about doing the right thing and the reward and the punishment. And that's one way of functioning. But for me, this is still sticking you in the space of morality when you have a preconceived notion of what is right and wrong. And what is the subtlety here is that it doesn't allow you to be in the space of truth of every single moment. For us to really live from our authentic self, as I said before, this authentic self is the truest version you can be in any given moment. So if there's no space for you to be spontaneously different in a moment, it's like you're not allowing yourself to grow, to evolve, to just change, to be different, to be dynamic. And that's a very human dimension. So for me, any sense of a contract or an agreement that is rigid, that is not allowing you to enact your truth of the moment, it's taking you to a mindset of, again, morality, that is what is the right or the wrong way of doing things, and it's not allowing you to function from truth. That is what is alive, what is real in this moment. So you can always have some sense of guidelines, some sense of agreements, but nothing should be prescriptive, nothing should be rigid, because then you lose the capacity of being truthful in every moment. Okay, so hopefully this idea is coming out clear. And this is why, again, I believe that giving out of generosity is to give when we are enjoying the dynamic, when we say yes to that, when we say, yes, this is something that I want to do. And I want to come back to this notion of reciprocity then. So how does reciprocity function if we are not being rigid in our structures? So the sense of reciprocity is, again, about the felt experience of a balance between the giving and the receiving with someone in particular. And this is something that, again, the more you do it in a transactional manner, the more you do, well, I wash dishes like 3 times last week. Now you have to do 4. You have to do this. Like I chopped the onions. Now it's your turn. Or I paid the bills. Now it's your turn. And these kind of things, again, they can develop certain kind of agreements and guidelines, but it's not the main resource you use in the co-creation. You can have like I call it like the semi-structure. You can have like a default base in which you're going to navigate to divide things, so you're not deciding every time what are the roles that you want to divide. And this is especially connected with, co-living and cohabitating, and maybe having spaces in which there are a lot of logistics involved. And even then, when you have a lot of logistics involved, you can have a semi-structure that is the base, but it would be great that you always have the chance to say, you know what, I'm not feeling like this today. And it's not going to be a moment that you feel guilty that you shouldn't honor your feelings because it's your duty. Again, it's your time to do something. It's just fair. You see, so then we can go a lot of the aspects of morality, all these judgments of it's not fair, it's my turn, it's my responsibility in this moment. If you just take this as commandments, as rigidity, is not going to allow you to say the truth. That is, now I'm feeling very tired. I don't think I have the energy to do this thing. And I know it would be my responsibility to do it. It was my agreement to do this right here, right now. And I'm not feeling capable. So I want to see with you if we can find another way of tackling this thing now. And I'm happy to, for example, compensate this in a different way later on. And I offer something, for example, I would like to offer doing something different. If it's about logistics, I can say, okay, I can do like 3 runs of laundry next week, if you do this pile of dishes now. Who knows? Like even this sense of renegotiating something can be connecting more with the truth of each moment. So if you see, what I'm trying to encourage you is to avoid acting on your own, is to avoid acting and giving, making these negotiations or these, in a way, equations of giving and taking on your own in your head, because then that is the self-demanding part. When you make these, in a way, agreements, or again, this is the word that will come up, is compromise. You will compromise some of the well-being that you would have if you would honor your truth for the sake of a greater structure that you believe in, that is this, in a way, transactional, rigid set of agreements and responsibilities. So for me, anything can happen. You can change your mind. You can even stick to the same principles or agreements, but you need the co-creation. You need to come back to being with the other person and saying, okay, this is where I am right here, right now, and this is what I want to do. So in that sense, you will not be going into a level of compromise and self-demand. You will be honoring your truth, and you will either give only when you feel a full yes, like you would say the joy of giving through generosity, or you will actually state a boundary and you will say, you know what, I cannot do this right now. And then you will deal with the truth of the other person, even if it's, again, renegotiating something or just expressing that or holding yourselves in the grief sometimes, as we were saying in the previous episode. Sometimes it's just sad that another person cannot commit to what you would expect them that they should commit to in terms of responsibilities or tasks or division of responsibilities, for example. But that is so needed, is to see, well, this is this person. We don't want the other person to say, okay, just force yourself to do it. I want you to have the output that I'm expecting and just repress who you are. We would like people sometimes that, okay, just be who I want you to be. And this is never going to be something long lasting. So for the person that is, again, compromising, self-demanding, giving out of duty because they feel like they are not up to the task, they are not giving as much as they're expected to be giving, this person is going into this people-pleasing. So this is the dynamic, you see. So in the same scenario, the person that is receiving now is feeling, let's say, at least satisfied that in this case, I am giving everything that they're expecting. And in that case, we feel that they are pleased. So I am pleasing the other one, but it's not focusing on my needs. It's not focusing on my balance, in my harmony, in me being responsible with my thoughts and feelings. I am giving out of this duty because I think I need to do that to receive something in return that could be just the maintenance of the relationship or the appreciation or just acknowledgement or just peace. So I will give out of self-demand. I will give out of duty. And the other person is going to be satisfied. So that's the people-pleasing. I'm just keeping the other person happy enough so I can receive something in return. But again, this is taking you away from the authentic self. It's not allowing you to be your truest version in every moment. It's not relying on the togetherness in spite of the conflict, as we have said, that can just say the truth of, now I am not capable of doing this. Okay, so this is what we need to start contemplating. We need to have a belief system that is aligned with our co-creation, in which we know that we believe in living by our truth, and that sometimes we will not be meeting the other people's expectations. And that is not a problem. You see, so even this is for me the togetherness in spite of conflict. So we can then separate the notion of, let's say, a conflict, but the conflict is not necessarily a problem. You see, so problem, let's say, is the unwanted reality. And we say, okay, it's part of our co-creation to know that we will face unwanted reality in the course of our relationship. And this will happen if we live by our truth. And we believe that this is the biggest north that we want to move towards. This is who we want to be. We want to live by our authentic selves. We want to live honoring our truth. And if we do that, it means that sometimes we will face unwanted reality with the other person, even with ourselves. And if we believe that from this co-creation, this is the element that allows you to feel more at ease when you will ask yourself, do I really want to do this? Because if you don't believe that you can honor your truth because you haven't agreed on that co-created vision, it's going to be much harder for you to honor your truth, because you may act from the previous patterns, from a lot of social imperatives and morality that is telling you that you have to do the right thing for you to maintain the relationship as it is, or just to stay together. And this is a lot connected with this idea that, again, socially is conceived of making it work. We have to make it work. We are already in this friendship, we have to make it work. We are already working together, we have to make it work. We are already married, we have to make it work. What does it mean to make it work? Usually it's just maintaining the status of the label for a period of time. Making it work, it is that after 5 years, we still call each other friends. We are still in this marriage. Is that making it work? Is that actually the satisfaction? Because if we are saying, again, if we change it radically to say we want to honor our truth, making it work is not matching that, because there's no it, there's no label, there's no objective more than living the truth. So it's to say, to be truthful, maybe that is what you want. So maybe the co-created commitment is like, we want to live honoring our truth every moment as much as we can. And that would be a very different mindset that you have, and that allows you to, again, live from this mindset towards truth, that is, again, exploring everything from curiosity and humility, and allows you to give only when you feel generous, only when you feel in the joy of giving. And this is something that is expressed when you feel the ease and the safety that you can trust the common container that believes in this, and you believe in the togetherness in spite of conflict, and you believe in the co-creation, and you believe that there are transient states of being that will go away from preconceived agreements or even distribution of tasks or any previous negotiation. We allow space for novelty. We allow space for the unexpected because we trust that we can deal with things as they come, and we trust in that togetherness in spite of conflict. Okay, so let's go back to this aspect of reciprocity that for me is still like a very important thing, because we're trying to move away from this, again, duty transactional dynamic that is self-demanding, that we have seen that is not going to allow us to live from our authentic self. And we want to give only when we feel generous. But then in the long run, you will be experiencing a sense of reciprocity, in sense of how much do I feel the other person contributing to our common relationship, to our common well-being, in a way that feels balanced. And this is something that is very connected with compatibility, because you can come very rapidly with a preset equation, again, in the moralistic aspects of what is the proper division of tasks for, again, a friendship, or even to live together with a roommate or anything like that. And maybe someone is not going to match those things. And you're giving everything you can, or in a way that feels right for you. But after a while, that another person is not contributing to that in a similar manner, in a balanced manner, we're going to see the details in a bit, you will not be satisfied. So you can say that the amount of the giving, the intensity, or the, let's say, time and energy that is invested in the common space is not feeling reciprocate. And that means that there is an element of compatibility that is not fully matching. Like if I'm in my most natural sense, in my giving time and energy, it may not be matching yours. Which means that instead of me necessarily expecting or demanding that the other person increases their output for this time and energy to be more balanced, I can also see if I want to reduce mine. Because this is also something that can be observed, because this is the actual moment in which we want to ask ourselves, what are we trying to make of this relationship? Are we trying to enforce our ideal vision of how it should be? Or we're going to work with it in the best way it can be? And this is, again, a part of compatibility, which means that if the other person is not so much into a few things, then maybe we will not have that much time and energy to share. And maybe I will invest less time and energy in that particular relationship, and I will put more time and energy in others. And this is how we are taking responsibility of our thoughts and feelings and our needs. And then we are moving into a concept of more what is called interdependence, that is moving away from the notion of codependency. That would mean to be expecting a particular individual to be meeting most, if not all, your needs. So then I say, okay, with this person, I cannot find this level of balance in the way I'm giving with my time and energy. So maybe I want to give less to that common container so it feels more balanced. I will give less time and energy to that common container so it feels balanced. And maybe the relationship is not feeling as ideal as I want. And then again, we can do this process of grieving the unwanted reality, because maybe we really wanted for that to be different. But then we take responsibility of our thoughts and feelings. We grieve, even if it's needed, the unwanted reality that we are not putting the same amount of time and energy in the way that for us would be satisfactory. We regulate the amount of time and energy we're giving, so we go into something that feels more reciprocate with what is already there from the other person. And then we can see if we have other needs to be met or more energy that we want to give in a space that is more well received or more reciprocated. We can put that time and energy with other relationships, in other settings, with other people. It can be anything. You can compensate situations with roommates, with relationships with family and friends or lovers. And this is about how you, again, develop your interdependency with other people. Okay, so at the same time, I think this process that I just described is important to be done, again, with the other person. I keep on sharing and encouraging you to leave your processes in co-creation. You express what's going on. So even before you do this whole process that I just mentioned, it would be great that you're checking in with the other person to say, you know, when you are not, again, doing the things we agreed on, I feel sad, disappointed, maybe angry a bit. And the story in my head is that you are not valuing our friendship as much as I thought or as much as I do, and it's not fair and it doesn't feel right. And you just express that. Again, there's a reality check. You do this reality check with the other person. And you can see, because this is very important for the other person, not to react, again, taking responsibility of, in this case, your feelings and acting from guilt. And then they would be possibly saying, okay, I want to do everything you want me to do. And then they would be going into the space of people pleasing. They will be giving in self-demand. They will be going into duty and transaction, because maybe they want to give as much as I'm asking just for them to please me. And then they getting the balance of the relationship. But you see, this whole situation of people pleasing is all based on the notion that there's a balance, like a magical balance that is there that will be achieved if we just do the right thing. That is basically the beliefs from morality. But if we question that, if we say, you know what, you don't have to do more than what you feel like doing. If I don't come to you and say, you have not done the dishes when you said, you haven't done this, I'm not complaining. I'm not acting, again, in this victim mode, because I'm basically expecting you to be responsible of my thoughts and feelings. I can just make the reality check as I just expressed. And then I want to say, okay, how do you feel about this? Maybe you overcommitted. Maybe you said that you could do things that are beyond your capacity. So then you can have a reality check, you know, to see if this person is going through a particular time in which they have less capacity, or this is something more according to how they live their lives, and this is a more baseline situation. So then you can talk about these things and say, okay, maybe this is too much for our container. We cannot both have the same capacity, and this is unrealistic. So then maybe you both agree that in this case, I would put less time and energy in that container, so we develop less in the common space, and then we can develop more in the interdependency. And this can have very concrete consequences. Like, again, if we are roommates, that may be that we, or I feel in this case, if I was feeling that I was putting more time and energy than the other person, I may feel that we are in an incompatible setting in which we can do several things. We can say, okay, I don't think we can do these things in the same way, so it doesn't feel reciprocal for me. So maybe I don't think I can live with you in this form. Or maybe we were developing a schedule to cook and it's not working out. But maybe instead of saying we cannot live together, maybe you can say, okay, why don't we eat out? Or why don't we order in? And if we're doing a lot of issues with laundry, we can just also kind of outsource this and say, okay, let's take this to a laundromat or something like that. So you can always have ideas of, again, finding ways of solving things together before creating like a big feeling of incompatibility overall, because it's not necessarily the ultimate resolution. And you can go through these things, that this is part of the co-creation. You will assess the compatibility of that, and that will be the part of the compatibility in your creativity and finding different ways of finding that sense of reciprocity and redefine the relationship. Sometimes there can be a transition in a different way that feels more reciprocate, because you are changing the ways each person is giving their time and energy. Okay, so that's a bit about the reciprocity aspect. I wanted to come back a little bit more to this idea of compromise. Again, it's part of the aspect of duty and transaction. But also it's very ingrained. I have seen this a lot from people, almost this belief that, well, compromising is a positive thing. You have to compromise. You have to give up. something that you like, in order, again, to make it work. We have this common narrative coming back from that. And the way I see it is that what sometimes we call compromise is not fully that. And it depends on how you function. I'm going to give you an example. So if I want to go out with someone, maybe it's a lover, and I say, you know what, I want to eat Italian food. And she says, I want to have Chinese food. And I'm like, I don't think so. I really want some pasta. I'm like craving carbs. I'm into this particular idea. And the other person is like, no, I really want Chinese. I really want to finally be able to use these chopsticks. Like, it's been such a big challenge, and I'm keep trying. And I want to just eat a whole chop suey with chopsticks and without help and without making a mess. And maybe when I listen to that, and I remember the last time we ate Chinese and you were using those chopsticks, I realized that it was very adorable to see you using the chopsticks. And I realized, you know what, watching you use those chopsticks, it's much higher in my priorities than having Italian food. So I can say, okay, you know what, yes, let's go to eat Chinese. I really want to see you using the chopsticks again. And I think, yeah, there's some nice places here. I can have my carbs out of spring rolls or whatever, a lot of rice maybe. So in that sense, what's happening here is not that I'm compromising and I'm saying, okay, whatever you want, let's just do it. That would be exactly the notion of duty. When we do that attitude, it's like, okay, whatever you want is basically to say, okay, I'm going to do what you want, but I will collect the points of debt and I will cash them later on. Because then this is what a lot of people do. They do this transactional dynamic of, I agree on eating Chinese this time, and now you have to come to me to eat Italian because it's just fair. This notion of fairness that I want to question also a bit, because it becomes morality. If you really feel the fairness, you can go for that because it's your authenticity, it's your truth. But if you are just trying to, in a way, defend a principle as you would do in a court of justice, it's not necessarily coming, again, from your heart or from your truth. It's more from this, for me, a fearful attitude in which you are avoiding someone to go over you. You're trying to self-preserve your notion of agency, your notion of dignity, your pride even. So sometimes we can go into these dynamics of, I don't want to be taken as less than I am because I may have had a wound of feeling inferior or insecurities of some sorts. So that's a very different attitude. But if I say, I really want to see you eat with the chopsticks, and that's something that for me is important, it's fully my responsibility that I'm saying, I want to do that. That, again, came forward or came higher in my list of priorities. So what I did instead of a compromise was a reprioritization of needs. When I see things together with someone else, I can redefine what is the priority of the different needs and wishes that I have. And this is something that, again, that can happen when we do reality checks, when we do co-creation, when we do processes together, when we share what's happening. And we just don't go into a more self-centered state of, I just want to do my own thing. You can still express, I want to do this thing, but you bring it to the common space and you allow the space for it to happen. And this is very important because this last bit that I'm saying is connected with also the aspect of, where am I giving from? Am I proposing something out of the generosity that there's a joy in giving my time and energy now to have this conversation, to really create a space that I want to eat with you? Or again, I'm acting out of duty. I'm thinking we have to eat together because we eat together every day, so we have to just do it, and I'll try to minimize my compromise. You see, this is a very, for me, self-demanding attitude. Because if we question everything, if we act from the truth of the moment, maybe I'm not even feeling generous with my time and energy to define where we want to eat. Maybe I want to eat on my own. So how much can I actually be responsible of my thoughts and feelings? How much I can have a mindset towards truth based on that co-creation, that we know that we can create a new reality every day, and we don't need to base ourselves in these preset agreements. This is the same thing that I was saying before, not having rigidity. Because if we said, okay, we agree on eating out every Wednesday, and then I feel like I have to do that, and I'm giving out of duty. And this, I'm going into this place, and in the same dialogue, I want to eat, Italian and but I'm not necessarily going into the common space of defining where we want to go from a space of joy, of celebration, of yes, let's eat out because it's something that we both want to do it. I'm doing it out of duty because it's the thing we agreed on. But this is again acting from the mindset of morality. What is the right thing to be done? It's the script that we defined. But this is why, again, the semi-structure is so important, is to say, well, yes, as a default, yes, we go eat out every Wednesday, but today I really want to eat by myself. And if you are, again, responsible of these thoughts and feelings, hopefully you will realize this as soon as possible, hopefully to avoid disappointment for the other person. But it still can happen. It still can be on the spot, and it still can be very disappointing for the other one, and the other person can still be very affected by that. But that's the truth. And then you go back to this togetherness in spite of conflict and realize, okay, this can happen. And it's much better for the relationship to honor truth and to say, you know what, in this very moment, I'm very sorry that I didn't realize before, but I'm not feeling in the capacity to share my meal with you. And that's the truth. And we will have to deal with that. And maybe that's going to bring consequences. And this is something how to process over time. But if these things, again, happen sporadically, maybe there's enough time and energy and resources and, again, a feeling of reciprocity that will still make the container satisfactory. But maybe if this is happening constantly and I don't really feel like you actually want to go out with me for dinner on Wednesdays, I'm going to reassess if we are compatible to do that particular thing, or if that strategy is still making sense. I have talked about before about the strategies that are trying to meet different needs. And this is something that we need to always reassess to live by our truth. We have to see, okay, the strategy to have fun together and to be in a social space together can be to eat out together. That's a strategy to meet those needs. But maybe if we're not matching on that, maybe we need to reassess the strategy, but to realize that the needs may still be there, or maybe the needs have shifted. So all of these things happen in the co-creation in the relationship, and just having communication and just checking in and having reality checks and seeing how it is functioning. So the more we do that, the more we find our truth, the more the other person will know where are we at, and we're not feeling that we need to hide who we are. We don't feel that we have to be doing things out of duty, or otherwise we will be punished, or we will not have what we expect of the other one. We will not be having a satisfactory relationship. We will not make it work. So this is so important, to use the chance of exploring the truth, having reality checks, and realizing that if we actually honor the truth, we will always be having the best relationship possible in each time, because we will be assessing the compatibility, and we will co-create and keep assessing where are we matching each day of our lives. And the moment it changes for both of us. The more you have reality checks, the least you would have an experience of someone suddenly saying, okay, I'm done with this, I cannot continue this relationship, because we are having check-ins. So any small movement of feeling or not wanting to do something with the other person, or feeling less invested in time and energy, will be seen. And there will be a process where you allow the other person to also to respond to that. If I decide to put less time and energy to a relationship, the other person will have consequences of that. They can actually feel relieved and say, okay, yes, thank you. I also felt that I wanted to put a bit less time and energy in this. Or it can be the opposite of saying, and this is what I have seen actually the least times. And this is something like, if I can share about my professional experience, I haven't seen this almost at all. That if when people is being truthful and they share, it's very rare to hear someone investing more and wanting more and growing more, if it's, again, from the truth, not from morality, and the other person wanting to withdraw. So in the cases that it can happen is when there is a moralistic approach to commitment. For example, when someone wants to develop the next landmarks in commitment. It happens a lot in romantic relationships. So you have been dating for a while, so the other person wants to move in together, the other person wants to get married, the other person wants to have a child, the other person wants to get the house in the beach. I don't know. This is the relationship escalator that you can look it up also, that I don't necessarily abide by, but it's again of the structures and the rigidity that sometimes we have in our heads as the mentally designed landmarks to evaluate the success of a relationship. But this is not necessarily coming from your truth. That would be, how does it feel to be together here now? How does it feel to live day by day with you? Like ideally, all these landmarks of commitment will be a reflection of how amazing it is to have the day to day. A lot of the times people are creating structures in the commitment, these landmarks, as the goal or as the objective, and even the, in a way, the substract that allows you to feel in satisfaction. For a lot of people, relationship satisfaction is based on what are the landmarks you are reaching, and not necessarily what is the quality of the relationship you're having. So I'm doing this for truth-based relationships. So for me, the truth would be connected with what are your needs and how are you expressing that, and how are you co-creating the relationship you want with anybody. And this is something that you should define. And maybe people can find a partnership, or sometimes even roommates function like that, and they have very clear boundaries, and they say, okay, we focus on the practicalities. We want a space that is just going to be kept clean. We have, you know, concrete structures for the use of the toilet, for the use of the kitchen, and we just stay away from each other's presence. For me, that's not necessarily a relationship, but it's an agreement, and it can help someone because it's not co-creating from reality checks and communication of getting to know who is the other one. For me, there's not necessarily a space of sincere consideration. It's more a space of abiding agreements and rules and settlements, like whatever agreements you have developed. So you see what kind of relationship you want. But my invitation is that you define that with another person. And when you are defining these things with another person, you will be seeing all these little details of how is the reciprocity coming up, how much someone can feel compromised. And it would be interesting to reassess that aspect of compromise to see if there's a reprioritization of needs or not. Because if I'm feeling like I'm compromising, the alternative is always to say, well, maybe I don't want to do this with you. You know, and maybe one last thing is to say, coming back to this example of the restaurant, like, again, if I really want to eat the Italian food and maybe I don't want to see you using the chopsticks or anything else, I can always say, you know what, I prefer to eat alone today if we're not agreeing. Because that's another thing that is about the truth of the moment that allows us to be in the space we are. And we are not living by this idea of the morality of we have to do everything together, for example, or we have to eat every Wednesday out. We can always reassess these things. And I sorry for repeating this, but for me, it's so important. If we just know, if we believe from our co-creation that we want to live our truth, meaning I want to know if you don't really want to be there with me. I want to know. I don't want you to fake it. And this is when a lot of people get a bit stuck, because the expectation that some people have sometimes is that I want you to feel it. I want you to want it. I want you to want me there with you eating Chinese food. You know, I want you to want that. But if I don't want it, then you're going to be disappointed because I don't want it. But you don't want me to fake it either. So it's very tricky, because sometimes we are expecting the other person just to be the way we want them to be. And we are expecting the other person to feel the way we want them to be. So this is a part of the, again, the acceptance of the unwanted reality. For example, if the person that wants to eat the Chinese food is not being accompanied in that, and their wish is, I really would like that you would come to eat Chinese with me and help me master these chopsticks or whatever. That's their wish. And maybe if I don't want that, they're going to be disappointed. You know, and maybe their attitude later on is like, why don't you want to do these things with me? And we haven't addressed these things before. This is still going into the victimhood and expecting the other person to be responsible of our thoughts and feelings. when we are rejecting the reality that I don't like that you don't want to do the thing that I want you to want, basically. So, and this is something that we need to accept, sometimes by grieving, that allows us to accept the unwanted reality, as we have seen. And this is something that is so important in the co-creation, in the assessment of compatibility. If we keep on assessing how we feel about things, how much we want to do things with the other one, how much, if we are honoring our truth, when are we really matching? What is the real compatibility of doing things together? And then we will actually assess the real compatibility. We may allow ourselves to shift the strategies into different strategies that we can co-create with creativity to meet the same needs, but in different ways. And we will see, again, what is the notion of reciprocity that we have with each other, and potentially reassessing the investment of time and energy we have with this person. That puts us back to the assessment of the compatibility of what kind of relationship are we having. And we can always reassess that. We can always say, what are we doing together? What kind of relationship is this? And what do we want to get from that? And to see if we are on the same page. And we will go back to the reassessment of compatibility, and we'll see if we want to transition the relationship into something different, to redefine it, to complement it with interdependence with other people. And maybe we still can be very happy and satisfied with our relationship, but we're going to say, okay, but I'm going to spend more time with this friend or with my family, because in this way I can be more satisfied in these particular dimensions. And we're not putting that responsibility on the other one, because that, again, would be going in the victim mode and expecting the other person to be responsible of your feelings and your thoughts and in your needs in this case. You see, so it's very important to connect with this and allow yourself to live from the truth, from curiosity, from humility, and to allow yourself to see what happens when you give only when you feel the joy of giving, when you feel that it's right to give, when it makes sense for you. And in this way, you will be able to keep co-creating this relationship. So one last reflection that I wanted to share with you about generosity, and to be very clear, is that the joy of giving that I'm referring to is not necessarily something that is fully liked, that you like every single bit of that. Okay, sometimes the joy of giving is the generosity of saying yes to something, but there can be some disliked elements of that. For example, if someone is sick and you really care for them and you want to go and take care of them and spend time with them or bring them food, this is something in which you have to be very clear, where are you at in the spectrum between duty and generosity? Because I have said before, in the spectrum, the more you move into duty and self-demand, the more you're going to expect something in return. The more you give something from generosity, from this saying yes to in a clear way, from the joy of giving, the less you would expect something in return. But for example, you can even do something with a lot of joy and really wanting to do something for this person, and you go and you take care of them when they're sick, and a part of you is really saying yes to that, but another part of you is saying, well, I'm not liking losing time that I had for my own leisure, or to have fun, or to visit this other friend, or to be with my lover, or to study, or anything like that. There can be elements that you are not doing, and things, and the experience to some extent may not be liked so much. It may be a long ride. You may need to drive under the rain. Who knows? There can be unpleasant moments to do that. But the act of giving is still coming from generosity, still coming from joy. And if you are doubting that, you always ask yourself, would have I preferred not to have done it? Would I prefer not to have come to see my friend? So that is the question that you can ask yourself if you're going into this almost like self-sabotaging state of being there with your friend and thinking, why did I do this? Or I shouldn't have done it. I should have done the studying. I should have been doing this other thing. Because maybe your answer is like, yes, I think I wouldn't have done it. Maybe you realize that you really did it out of duty because you thought this is what friends do. And I have to do it, and I'm self-demanding, I'm going away from my needs, I'm not taking care of myself or what my priorities are, and I'm doing something, expecting something in return, that is basically this person to appreciate me, to stay in my life, and in a way, I'm collecting credit or good deeds so I can cash out when I need something from someone else. And this is not really what we want to develop, because it's not going to be behaving from our authentic selves is going to be more an exchange of favors, or more, again, transaction that is more like credit and it's like money. But if it's like that, you can just buy services here and there and just collect more money developing services or performing in different jobs. So that's a different mentality. So if we want to act in relationships from our truth, we want to bring who we are and we want to co-create with others. And we want to develop this space in which the togetherness, in spite of conflict, will allow you to trust that you can say, you know what, I would really like to take care of you, but I have a lot of other priorities that I feel I would self-demand a lot if I wouldn't do first. But I can try to help you, for example, in finding resources. So when you cannot be the provider and you still want to be caring, you can always find resources with the other person. You can try to say, okay, who else can come and visit, for example? You can support in different ways. And all these different ways of giving are, again, what are creating the notion of reciprocity, because it's connected with the attitude, with the willingness, with how much we care and how much are we showing that care. Because if that care is there, it's going to be felt regardless of the way it's expressed. And then it becomes reciprocal. But this can be seen when we actually express that from the truth, and we're not just behaving by the way we're supposed to behave. Okay, so just that final line with generosity, and for you to observe when you're giving from generosity and when you're giving from duty, self-demand, transaction, and the whole aspect of morality and your responsibility of your thoughts and feelings. So I'm going to leave you reflecting on that. This is all for today. Thank you for listening. This is Truth-Based Relationships, the podcast, and I'll see you in another episode.